You think you know what happens when someone finally breaks? Think again, because what Carl Jung discovered about empaths will fundamentally change how you see yourself and everyone around you. Carl Jung documented a psychological pattern so chilling that it haunted him for decades. He called it the most terrifying transformation in human nature. But here's what will shake you to your core. He wasn't talking about people becoming monsters. He was talking about people becoming themselves. Picture this: gentle souls, broken and battered, walking into Jung's Zurich clinic. People who apologized for breathing, who absorbed everyone else's pain, like emotional sponges. Jung expected to treat victims. Instead, he discovered he was sitting across from dormant psychological weapons, what I call the awakened ones. The kindest people aren't weak. They're weapons waiting to be forged. Jung's case files reveal a pattern that will make your blood run cold. Patient after patient arrived, carrying identical wounds. Empaths systematically destroyed by the very people who claimed to love them. They came with bruises they rationalized away, depression they blamed on themselves, and that universal tendency to apologize for simply existing. But here's where Jung's story takes a terrifying turn. These empaths didn't just endure abuse, they studied it. When Jung asked them to describe their relationships, he expected the scattered thoughts of shattered minds. What he found instead changed everything he thought he knew about human psychology. These patients hadn't been broken by abuse, they had been cataloging it. Jung discovered that empaths kept detailed mental archives of every person who had ever hurt them. They knew their abusers' triggers, insecurities, and deepest fears. They had mapped emotional patterns with surgical precision. They possessed this devastating knowledge, yet they had never used it not once until something pushed them past their breaking point. If you've ever felt like people underestimate your awareness, listen closely. Jung realized he wasn't treating victims. He was sitting across from psychological geniuses in hiding. These empaths' superpower wasn't creation, it was emotional archaeology. They could excavate people's deepest wounds just by watching micro-expressions. Jung began testing their abilities. He brought colleagues into sessions without revealing anything about them. Within minutes, these empaths identified childhood traumas, relationship patterns, and professional insecurities with a 95% accuracy rate. Here's what made Jung's hands tremble as he wrote his notes. These empaths weren't psychic. They were simply paying attention at a level most humans never reach. What others called intuition, they called data collection. Society had convinced these individuals that their gift was a curse. Every time they tried to voice what they saw, the lies, the manipulation, the hidden agendas, people dismissed them as too sensitive or overly emotional. They learned to silence themselves, to doubt their perceptions, to apologize for seeing what others couldn't. But truth doesn't vanish when you stop speaking it. It accumulates, and in these cases, it had been building for decades. Jung observed something revolutionary. Empaths don't lose their minds from feeling too much. They lose their minds from being told their feelings are wrong. These patients weren't having nervous breakdowns, they were having breakthroughs. Jung identified a consistent pattern across every case. The transformation didn't happen gradually. It exploded in one devastating moment. The trigger was always betrayal. Not just any betrayal, but betrayal by someone the empath had completely trusted and protected. Case after case revealed the same scenario. The empath would discover infidelity, financial betrayal, or emotional manipulation from their closest person. What made it devastating wasn't the act itself. It was the crushing realization that they had seen the signs all along and ignored them. These patients did what empaths do. They said nothing, absorbed the pain, blamed themselves, and tried harder to be perfect. Then came what I call the clarity event, when the empath's pattern recognition finally overwhelmed their need to believe the best in people. Most people expected empaths to cry, scream, or fall apart. Their abusers were prepared for emotional chaos. What happened instead was something that terrified everyone involved. The empaths became unnaturally calm. Jung documented this as the moment when someone finally integrates their analytical capabilities with their emotional intelligence. These empaths didn't attack or rage. They simply began to speak truth, revealing everything they had observed, cataloged, and silently endured, not with cruelty, but with clinical precision, like surgeons identifying each diseased organ before removing it. This wasn't revenge, it was clarity. Jung realized this pattern wasn't about vengeance, it was shadow integration. The moment when someone stops denying the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. The empath's shadow wasn't evil. It was their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength. Here's what disturbed Jung most. The transformation was permanent. These patients didn't cycle back into people-pleasing. They didn't apologize for their newfound boundaries or second-guess their perceptions anymore. They had become what Jung feared most, empaths who could no longer be manipulated. Within months, their entire lives transformed. They left abusive relationships with strategic precision. They cut contact with toxic family members without emotional drama. They rebuilt their lives on their own terms, becoming what Jung called selectively empathetic, still deeply caring, but strategically protective of where that care flowed. The most disturbing part? These transformed empaths' presence affected everyone around them. People who had once walked all over them suddenly felt nervous in their presence. They couldn't explain why these empaths weren't aggressive or cruel, but everyone sensed something fundamental had changed. Jung identified what he called the predator's instinct. Manipulative people can sense when their usual tactics won't work. They avoid integrated empaths like vampires avoid sunlight. Jung spent years following these transformed patients. What he discovered kept him awake at night. These individuals had become extraordinarily successful. Their businesses thrived because they could read clients' real needs. Their relationships flourished because they could identify emotional predators within minutes. Their decisions were flawless because they trusted their intuitive intelligence completely. Jung realized something that chilled him to the bone. These empaths hadn't become less empathetic. They had become perfectly empathetic, which meant they were also perfectly strategic. They could manipulate others as easily as they had once been manipulated. They understood human psychology at a level that made them nearly omnipotent in social situations. But here's what truly terrified Jung. These transformed empaths chose not to use this power destructively. They could have destroyed every person who had ever hurt them. Instead, they simply removed toxic people from their lives and moved on. Jung had witnessed the birth of what he called the integrated empath, someone with both the sensitivity to feel everything and the wisdom to choose what deserved their energy. These transformations didn't happen in isolation. Jung documented how their changes affected every system they had been part of. Family dynamics collapsed, not because these individuals destroyed them, but because they stopped enabling dysfunction. Their transformation forced everyone around them to evolve or reveal their true nature. The healthy people grew stronger from their example. The toxic people exposed themselves through desperate attempts to pull these empaths back into old patterns. Jung observed what I call the empath's mirror effect. These transformed individuals didn't have to actively confront dysfunction anymore. Their mere presence reflected issues back with uncomfortable clarity. Jung's most disturbing discovery came when he introduced these transformed patients to others in his practice. Within minutes, they could identify core psychological wounds and the exact therapy needed. Jung realized these empaths' diagnostic accuracy surpassed his own decades of training. This created an ethical dilemma that haunted him. If empaths could develop this level of psychological insight, what did that mean for the future of psychology itself? Jung's research left us with one crucial question, not whether empaths will transform, but whether they'll do it consciously or let life force it upon them. His final insight still resonates today. Never underestimate someone who has learned to trust their own perceptions completely. The awakened empath represents psychology's most powerful evolution. Every empath will face their transformation moment, The betrayal so profound it forces them to choose between remaining a victim or becoming sovereign. The question isn't whether you'll snap. It's whether you'll integrate your shadow consciously or let it consume you destructively. Remember Jung's essential discovery: your sensitivity isn't your weakness, it's your weapon. And the day you learn to wield it consciously is the day you become truly powerful, not dangerous to innocent people, but dangerous to those who would exploit your gifts. The world doesn't need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones. The empath will snap. The only question is, will you direct that power, or will it direct you?